to show you my process for recorking a clarinet. I'd like to have most of my tools and supplies very close so I don't have to get up a bunch of times during the process. So those tools that I like to have on hand are calipers. Can be any old calipers. I've got a digital calipers. I almost never turn on the digital part, so any calipers will do. Mine just happen to be digital. A pen or a pencil. You can have either some wide non-serrated jaw, so smooth jaw, duckbill pliers, something nice and wide like that, or a big mallet and an anvil. We'll go over why it's one or the other of those two things in just a couple minutes. Straight edge, a new razor blade, paraffin wax, contact cement, and thinner for said contact cement, and cork. So let's start with the cork. I've got two different sizes of cork here. I've got 1/16 of an inch thickness, and I've got 3/64 of an inch thickness. So only 1/64 of an inch difference in the thickness of the cork. So why do I have two? Typically, clarinets will take 3/64 of an inch, and saxophones will take 1/16 of an inch on the neck. However, there are many, many instances where clarinets would also take 1/16 of an inch. I can't guarantee what size you'll need, even if I know your make and model of your instrument, but I will share with you a few things that I've noticed. Plastic clarinets. Every plastic clarinet I have ever seen has taken 3/64 of an inch. So if it's a plastic clarinet, you should be good to go with 3/64 of an inch. I don't want to say everyone in the world will take that, because as soon as I say everyone takes that, you might only be recorking plastic clarinets. You'll find one that doesn't take it, and you'll be like, oh, that jerk Miles, he lied to me. So everyone I've ever seen, and I've seen thousands, has taken 3/64 of an inch. It's a pretty good bet that your plastic clarinet is going to take 3/64 of an inch. So what takes 1/16? Really old clarinets tend to take 1/16. I'm not about to estimate how old. I've just noticed that vintage clarinets are more likely to take 1/16 of an inch. Clarinet mouthpieces, including student level mouthpieces, tend to take 1/16 of an inch. I'd say 9 out of 10 that I see needs the thicker cork, needs the 1/16 of an inch. Bass clarinets, no matter what they're made out of, whether they're plastic or wood, all the joints on those seem to tend to take 1/16 of an inch. For newer stuff, one thing that I have noticed that almost always takes 1/16 of an inch is newer buffets. So ones with that new logo there, if you see that, that's a good bet that it's going to need 1/16 of an inch. Ones with the old classic logo that aren't super duper old, those tend to take 3/64, has been my experience. If you're not sure, do the bigger cork, because it's just going to take you a little bit of extra time sanding at the end. So when in doubt, do the 1/16 of an inch, and you'll just have to spend a few extra minutes sanding at the end. If you do a cork that's too small, so if I were to put a 3/64 on this one, say, it's going to be too small at the end, and I have to do everything over again. I would way rather sand a little bit extra than to have to redo the entire process over again. So that's my spiel on cork sizes. So 3/64, you're out of here. 1/16, you're in. So I need to determine how wide of a strip I need to cut. I don't care what the actual measurement is. You can get this measurement in a variety of different ways. I think by far the easiest and most accurate way to do it is to use a calipers. You want to use like the inside measuring part of the tool, and I am going to measure that. And then just about all calipers, no matter how basic or fancy they are, will have a little screw of some sort there. I'm going to lock that in. And I'm going to double check that because I need that size to be accurate there. So I want to make sure I didn't move it a little bit when I locked it in. We're good. I'm happy with that. Notice I haven't even turned on the digital part. 9 times out of 10 when I'm using these, especially for corks, I just want to get that measurement. I care that I have that. I don't care what the number is. So I'm going to take my piece of cork. It looks like I've been cutting on this end already, so I'm going to start on this end. I'm going to measure that. Take my pen and draw a little mark indicating the distance between the edge of the cork and how wide I need the strip of cork to be. Okay, so I know my cork's going to be this wide. You can see from the last time I cut a tenon cork out of this piece of sheet cork. There's my mark from the last one. So it's going to be that wide. Do the same thing on the bottom. So there we go. Now, you don't need to draw a line or anything to connect them. You will simply use your straight edge to connect the dots. Fresh razor blade. Take your time here setting up your straight edge. Now I'm holding this down pretty tightly with my hand, and then with my other hand I'm going to use kind of the corner of the razor blade, and I'm going to be leaning in ever so slightly into the straight edge to make sure I'm like leaning up against that, and I'll get a nice straight cut. Cool. So that went all the way through. I was actually trying not to quite go all the way through. You might not go all the way through. You'll just have a perforation there. Just rock it back and forth, and it'll break off cleanly. So don't like try to tug it out. If it's still kind of hanging by a thread there, just rock it, and it'll go and snap right off. So I want to check again to make sure that I haven't screwed anything up. If I have screwed something up, I want to stop here and go back to the beginning now, instead of waiting until I'm all the way done to go back to the beginning. So I'm just going to kind of dry fit this, and yeah, that looks good to me. If it was way too big or way too small, I'd stop right there and I'd recut it. It can be a little tiny bit off. Say it was like wiggling a little bit back and forth, or you were like smushing it in there and you could smush it in. That's fine. Little stuff like that's going to come out in the wash when we sand it at the end. So you want it like pretty close. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect though. Next thing we have to do, my preferred method, remember I gave you a choice earlier. We either got the smooth jaw, wide pliers, like these duck bills, or you could have the mallet and the anvil. We need to remove the pith from the instrument. Pith is the stuff in the cork that's kind of making this rigid. Notice it's not like flopping over with gravity. It's still pretty straight there. We need to get this a little bit more bendy and flexible. That's going to be how we take out some insurance against it cracking when we make it go from the straight line that it wants to be in into a circle to go around the tenon. So I am going to squeeze the pith out of the cork. Yes, that's the actual term for it. So I'm just squeezing fairly hard, and I'm making sure I don't miss any spots. All right, and that's pretty pliable now. It's way better than it was before, and it will typically have a natural bend to it, and that's the way that we're going to cork it, is whatever way it wants to go, we're going to roll with that. You know, there's it's not perfect. There's going to be like little weak spots. You can see all the dots in any tenon cork. So it could break there, you know, and if it happens, it happens, but we've just taken out some insurance and we've made it way less likely that that's going to happen when we put it on the tenon. So say you didn't have something like that, and this is how I started out getting rid of the pith. If you don't want to squeeze the pith out, you can actually beat the pith out of the cork. It does essentially the same thing. And I started out doing it this way, but I like squeezing it a lot better because I can really keep track of where I've squeezed, whereas hitting it, it's way better than nothing, but there's no way to guarantee that I've hit every last little bit on here. I don't know exactly where the mallet is striking the cork or anything like that, so I prefer squeezing when possible. It also only takes one tool instead of two, so it's a little quicker. Just my 2 cents on that. Either way is fine. So we've got that, and we need to do one last thing before we glue it up. We need to cut a little bevel at the end for where the cork is going to lap around itself. So this is going to be a lap joint, it's called, and I'm going to cut about a 45-degree slice like that. Again, taking my razor blade, this is one spot where you really want to make sure the razor blade is nice and sharp. If you have any doubt, razor blades aren't too expensive. Get rid of it, get a new one. And I am just going to make one chop at approximately a 45-degree angle. Don't need to get out a protractor or anything like that. You just want it approximately 45 degrees. So there you go, about a 45-degree cut. So let's get it glued up. We're going to use contact cement for this. I'm bougie, so I use kind of fancy designer contact cement that I get from J.L. Smith. This is called Barge contact cement. If you're not doing a ton of corks, the cheapest bottle you can find at your local hardware store is totally fine. Whatever kind you get, I would recommend that it has a brush top can. That makes things way, way easier. So the brush is already built in. This is a pretty new one, so it's a little drippy. That's okay. Take off the excess. And so where I just did that chop right there, that little tiny 45-degree bevel, I'm going to put contact cement on that. And now I'm going to flip the whole thing over, and I'm going to contact cement the whole inside part. That's the part that's actually going to touch the instrument. I'm going for about the thinnest layer I can do while ensuring that I've covered everywhere. I want a real thin layer, but I don't want to miss any spots either. Cool. That should be good. I'll set that aside. And then, so how does contact cement work? If you've never contact cemented before, it's a little bit unique when compared to other adhesives. You actually need to put the cement on both sides of the things you're going to stick together. So I can't just cement the cork and call it good. I've also got to cement the tenon. I got to cement where that cork's going to adhere to. So let's do that. If you drip a little of this somewhere you don't want it to, it scrapes off really easily. And if you accidentally drip a lot of it somewhere that you don't want to, that's why I've got the bottle of thinner with me. So same story as when I was doing the cork itself. I'm putting as thin a layer as possible while also making sure that I don't miss any spots. Think we're good. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. So another way that contact cement is unique is most adhesives, you would want to work with it while it's wet, right? You don't want to let the glue dry before trying to stick the pieces together. Contact cement is definitely unique because you do need to let it dry. So use the manufacturer's recommendations. Barge recommends 10 minutes of dry time. So I am going to let this dry before I stick it together. It's not like it's ruined if you waited 11 minutes. I've even waited a few hours and it is totally fine. The one thing you want to make sure is you don't want to rush it. So go fix something else, go play some scales, go answer a few emails, but do something so you're not tempted to stick this together too early. Set a timer if you need to, because if you stick it together too early and it doesn't stay, you're right back to square one. You're never going to be able to salvage it. So make sure that you wait at least 10 minutes. Okay, it's been over 10 minutes. I'm ready to put the cork on, and the only tool that I'm going to need for this stage is my straight edge. So I'm going to take that bevel. I'm going to go on the back side of the clarinet, the part that you won't be able to see when the clarinet is lying in the case. Functionally, this makes absolutely no difference. It just makes it look nicer. So when the instrument's sitting there, we won't be able to see the seam. We're going to barely be able to see the seam anyway, but I want that seam on the downside just so the clarinet looks as nice as possible when it's sitting there in the case. So starting on the back side, going to get it started there. And now remember, there's contact cement on that bevel, right? That was the first thing we contact cemented. I don't want to take my dirty, greasy, oily finger and touch the contact cement because that could compromise the integrity there. There's only a little tiny bevel, and that's what's going to hold the whole thing together once it wraps all the way around. So I'm going to take my straight edge, and I'm going to use the straight edge to kind of push that down. So I'm just giving it a little nudge to make sure it's securely sticking to the instrument, and it is. Now, I'm okay to touch the rest of it. There's no glue on any of this. So I'm going to slowly and firmly push this down all the way around the instrument. Cool, we're there. So I guess I lied, there is two tools you need for this. You do need still a nice sharp razor blade to cut off the tail there. So carefully slice the tail, err on the side of leaving too much cork. There, because we're gonna have to sand that nub off anyway. So really be careful. You don't want to cut too deep because then you'll cut into cork that's not on the overlap, and then you gotta start all over again. I like to live dangerously, so I'm gonna cut one more little slice. There we go. So the cork is on, and all we have to do now is get it sanded and fit to the bell. Okay, so we just need to get this sanded and get everything fit, and we will be done. So three things I'm going to use for this step are, this is called a bench peg. It just goes into the side of my workbench, and that's what's going to allow me to keep both hands free while I sand the instrument. The cork on the instrument, of course, try not to sand the instrument. A strip of sandpaper. I like 220 grit for this. I'm going to tear it to the size I want it. And then paraffin wax. That's going to be the very last thing we do to it. So I'm going to take the instrument and I'm going to rest it between my belly and the bench peg, and now I've got both hands free to work the instrument. I start out slowly getting rid of that nub from where we cut off the excess. And I'm going to get that nub nice. You're probably pretty much always going to be able to see it, but I don't want to be able to feel it. So once I can't really feel that anymore, now we're good, and now I really want to start thinking about making this the size that it needs to be so that the bell goes on easily. So I'm going to check the bell. It almost, if I really force this, I could probably get that on right now. It would be way too tight though, probably get stuck. So I definitely need to take a little bit off, but actually not too much here. So when you do this, Be careful to not be sanding the shoulders. That's the edges here. It might be a metal tenon ring. This is the tenon ring, by the way, because this is the tenon. So when it's got a metal piece like that, that's the tenon ring. Or the shoulder. That's that little bit of wood with no cork on it between where the rest of the body kind of flares out and where the cork starts. So try really hard not to sand either of those. It's not the end of the world if you nick it once, but you don't want to take off too much material because then you're going to have a really bad fit and the bell's going to fall off no matter how good your cork is. I'm going to flip it over, sand a little bit on the other side. Check it again. I want it to go on fairly easily, maybe halfway or so, which it does. And keep in mind, there's no cork grease on there or anything, so we're good to go there. This thing's ready. My last step, just because it keeps it nice, makes it look nice, it keeps those pores from getting bigger over time, and it's going to make the cork last longer. It's also going to provide a barrier between the cork grease and getting through the cork down to the cement. Cork grease will actually break down the cement over time. So I want a barrier to that, so that's where my paraffin wax comes in. So I've just got a chunk of it here, and I'm just going to rub this on. So I've got the wax on there, so that's going to provide a barrier. However, if I just leave it like that, the first time I put the bell on, about half of that's going to wipe right off. So I want to melt that in. So I'm just using a hot air gun for this. If you're really quick, you can use a cigarette lighter or something like that. But just try not to put too much heat on it. And that's it. So that wax is going to stay in place for a really long time now, and it's going to keep the cork nice and sealed up. Of course, we want some cork grease on it. I like Ultimax from Music Medic. They sell it in normal little tubs, but they also sell it in these syringes. It's really nice in the repair shop to have it in syringe form. And there we go. No wobble. Definitely not in danger of it falling off, but it was also pretty easy to get on. We're good. I'm pretty happy with that recork. Hey everyone, real quick, I just wanted to show you what I had planned back when I was planning on doing this clinic in person. I have bags and boxes and tons of scrap clarinet joints. That's just one small example right there. I probably have about 10 times what's in this bag. And I was going to bring them with me to Clarinet Fest and let everybody try a hands-on recorking. So you'd actually be able to do one for yourself. So obviously because of COVID, we're not able to do that in person. So you're stuck watching me on video. But be on the lookout for that clinic at a future Clarinet Fest or educational conference, and I really hope we can get it together at some point. Looking forward to seeing everybody in person again sometime, hopefully in the really near future. Thank you so much for watching my clinic, and enjoy the festival.